بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So last week, right after Ramadan, Alhamdulillah, we began Surat Al Hajj, which is the 22nd chapter of the Quran. And as we normally do, we began with the holistic tafsir of the surah. We looked at the main theme of the surah and how central Ibrahim alayhi salam was to the whole surah, and how Ibrahim alayhi salam was introduced in Surat Al Anbiya, which is chapter number 21, followed how he is introduced in that in Surat Al Anbiya as a destroyer of idols, as a destroyer primarily, as a deconstructor, if you like, and how he is introduced in Surat Al Hajj as actually a builder, how he builds after he destroys. So in Surah Ibrahim, one of the unique surahs that introduces Ibrahim in the first place as a builder. So we looked at some of the key concepts that Ibrahim alayhi salam introduces in the context of reform, how reform has this dimension to it, the deconstructive dimension and the reconstructive dimension. We saw both with Ibrahim alayhi salam. And how is it that we have a specific bond with Ibrahim alayhi salam, unlike our relationship with any other prophet. The surah ends with this, Huwa sammakum al-Muslimin, he named you the Muslims. And we looked at the phenomena of naming, how naming is something that has value to it, the relationship between naming and meaning, how naming is not a random thing. Islamically, Quranically, it has connotations, it has meaning to it, it has value to it, etc., etc. Today, inshallah, we begin the atomistic tafsir, if you like, where we take a verse by verse tafsir. And inshallah, we'll be looking at the first two verses of the surah. So it's 22nd chapter, Surat Al Hajj, the pilgrimage. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد. O people, be mindful of your Lord. إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم. The earthquake of the hour is a big, mighty thing. يوم ترونها, the day you see it, تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت. Every nursing mother, if you like, every breastfeeding mother won't think anymore of her baby. وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها, and every pregnant woman will actually miscarry. وترى الناس سكارى, and you will see people looking drunk, but they are not drunk. ولكن عذاب الله شديد. It's just Allah's punishment is too mighty. What an image to begin the surah with. How the Day of Judgment really disturbs the running of things, the grand scheme of stuff that we see. The hour will disturb everything. And that's why we need to always be mindful of Allah. Hence, the beginning of the surah with taqwa, being mindful of Allah. The concept of taqwa has taken up much of our attention over the past years, of course, rightly and duly. When I look at this passage, I am struck. So many things to be struck by, really, but I'm primarily struck by the language of the Quran. The balagha side of it, the rhetoric side of it aside, but just the semantics, the words the Quran uses. So it begins with the word an-nas. And an-nas literally is often translated as people. And an-nas, you know, linguists often debate where this word comes from. While this is quite debated, a lot of linguists argue that an-nas is the plural form of al-insan. What is al-insan? The human being. So this is insan and this is nas. Linguistically, again, the vast majority of linguists argue that al-insan comes from forgetfulness, that we forget. And an-nas is linked to al-uns. And al-uns literally means, you know, companionship, connection, if you like, closeness, comfort. So if al-insan is linked to an-nisyan, as in the fact that we forget, and an-nas is linked to al-uns, that we find we are always in the pursuit of comfort, we are always in the pursuit of company, we are always in the pursuit of having close relationships with people. We can't really live on our own, right? These two words, yeah, these are big concepts. Like it's us, it's our identities as people, as human beings. Indicate really some of the beautiful aspects of this language. Classical linguists will always say that what makes the Arabic language unique أنها لغة تحمل في طيات مفرداتها معانيها. This language carries within its own words the meanings themselves. Etymologically, if you really dissect these words, you will find that these words are meaningful in themselves. Think of English, for example. If you say the verb do, does, what does it mean? If you really analyze the verb in and of itself, you can't really trace meanings as such, like consistently. With the Arabic language, I mean, across languages, that's the case. With Arabic, it is quite different, especially the words and the vocab that the Quran picked out of the whole pre-Islamic Arabic thing. So is it not interesting that al-insan denotes something to do with us in our DNA that we forget? Then we are named as al-insan. An-nas discusses another, or connotes another dimension of the human nature, that we are always in the pursuit of these things, companionship, connection, etc., etc. And the thing is, these two things have been found and practiced by our own father, Adam alayhi salam. وعصى آدم ربه فغوى وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى فنسي ولم نجد له عزما. So Adam forgot. So that's the Adam is associated in the Quran with a couple of things. First, he made a mistake when he ate from the tree. Second, he forgot and ate from the tree. Third, is probably, I have in mind the hadith narrated by Imam al-Tirmidhi in his Jama' al-Tirmidhi, where he tells us something of this nature, forgetfulness. No matter how, the authenticity of the hadith, it lies in one of the 6 canonical collections of hadith. But it says, لما خلق الله آدم مسح على ظهره. When Allah created and designed and fashioned Adam, he wiped at his back. فخرج من ظهره كل نسمة هو خالقها إلى يوم القيامة. So when Allah wiped at Adam's back, um, every single soul that would come um, out of Adam's creation, that is us, came out. فجعل آدم ينظر إليها. So Adam started to look at this, and he asked Allah, "What is this? Who are these people?" فقال له الله عز وجل: تلك ذريتك من أول الخليقة إلى آخرها. These are your descendants from the beginning of time until the end of time. So he said, and the hadith goes, وجعل الله بين عيني كل واحد منهم نورا بين عينيه. So in every soul of these souls that were showed to Adam alayhi salam, everyone had some sort of light in between his eyes. فجعل آدم ينظر إليهم فرأى إنسانا أعجبه نور ما بين عينيه. So when he saw all those souls, amongst those souls, he was really fascinated by one single soul because of the brightness of that light in between the two eyes. He asked Allah who that is. Allah Azza wa Jal responded to Adam by saying, this is one of your descendants that will come later in the later generations. Who it was? It was Dawood alayhi salam. He says, this is David, Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. Adam alayhi salam asks, كم جعلت عمره? For how long will he be living on earth? So Adam was so fascinated by him, he wanted him to live long. So Allah told Adam he will be living for 60 years. 60 سنة. فقال آدم فأعطه من عمري 40 سنة. Give him 40 years of my age. I know I'm going to be living for long. Give David 40 years of my life. فأعطاه الله. So David was given 40 years of Adam's life. فلما جاءه ملك الموت, when Adam's time came in to die, apparently Allah told Adam for how long he would live. So Adam asked Malak al-Maut, the angel of death, I thought this is not my time yet. I still have 40 years to live for. The angel of death reminded Adam alayhi salam, said, haven't you given those 40 years to David? He said, no, I haven't given him anything. And the hadith goes, فَجَحَدَ آدَمُ فَجَحَدَتْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُ. So Adam denied, so his descendants will similarly deny. وَنَسِيَ آدَمْ فَنَسِيَتْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُ. And Adam forgot, his descendants will always be forgetful. وَأَخْطَأَ آدَمُ فَأَخْطَأَتْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُ. And Adam made a mistake when he ate of the tree, and equally his descendants will always make the same stuff. The same will always be khatta'in, making mistakes. So it runs in the family, and we're all of the same family. Wallahi, it is true. And this surah exposes much of this. Surat Al Hajj is so powerful. Watch last week's circle. It was literally on this. The surah is very exposive, if you like, of the human nature. So the fact that we forget is a basic thing. Al-nas, the fact that we are always in the pursuit of uns, in the pursuit of companionship, in the pursuit of connection, in pursuit of closeness, in pursuit of comfort. And that's why Allah created Eve, Hawa, for Adam. هو الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وجعل منها زوجها ليسكن إليها. And he made Eve or Hawa for Adam so that he may find comfort and companionship in someone else. That's how we are designed. These two dimensions are basic stuff to our existence as human beings: forgetfulness and our pursuit of connection and uns. Forgetfulness is a disease. We have to fight against it. Forgetfulness results and comes out of one of the most common diseases that the Quran speaks of, is the concept of ghafla. Ghafla is often translated as heedlessness. When you are heedless, as if you are, you know, spiritually asleep or intellectually asleep. You're not really alert to what is around you. You're not alert to what your purpose is. What am I doing here? Uh, Really, one of the most dangerous diseases in the Quran, but we barely take it seriously, even though it's a very serious one. In the uh, Egyptian folkloric culture, I mean, I think it exists probably in the whole Arab world, maybe. Mothers would always make this dua to their own children. They would say, ربنا يقيك ساعة الغفلة شر ساعة الغفلة. May Allah keep you away from moments of heedlessness. That would be like a motherly thing, like a normal, typical motherly dua they would make to the. And I think they inherited this from. They don't think about it differently when they say these duas, but it must have come from our spiritual tradition. We've had a really deep tradition, and I like to think at some point people took these words seriously. Again, in the Egyptian culture, we always say when you ask someone to look after themselves, what do we say? Egyptians, exactly. خلي بالك من نفسك. Empty yourself of yourself. Which literally means the opposite, but it goes back to the spiritual tradition. What is the spiritual tradition? You are meant for you to really be focused on what you are meant to be focused on, but because we have become very much egocentric, we forget why we're here. So for you to focus on your job and your function and your objective here on earth, you need to empty your mind of yourself. So I think much of this come from such a deep spiritual tradition, but because with the force of habit, people forget. So al-ghafla is a big thing in the Quran, um, and that's why dhikr becomes a big thing. Why dhikr is a big thing? Because it's the best cure to ghafla. If ghafla is about forgetfulness, dhikr is about remembering, reminding, if you like. Uh, Al-uns, like I said, Allah has designed us in this way. We pursue this. Adam himself, our father, has had the same thing. Equally, we have the same thing. Our need for closeness, connections, etc., etc. This is more of a disease. This one needs more guidance. As in, al-uns in and of itself is not problematic, but one always needs to know, needs to locate where this uns should be. Our uns should primarily be in Allah in the first place, right? And secondarily in anything else, as in unconditional basis. Like I'll have my ons in this man or in this woman if she fulfills specific conditions. If those conditions are not there, I don't think it would be wise for me to be in this state. So for you not to be disappointed, for you not to be rejected, for you not to every relationships are big things in life. They are big things because it's part of our DNA. Al-ons. So one needs to always put his primary ons in Allah and secondarily in people conditionally on how much they relate to Allah, depending on how much they relate to Allah. That's how one defines the idea of ons. But it's so central to us. That's why we develop in relationships simply because of this. Relationships can make or break one's life, isn't it? Why why is such the case? Simply because of this. It is in our name. It is in our name. Um, Another thing that fascinates me about this passage um, is the Quranic usage of the word murdi'a. Normally, in Arabic, obviously is this a masculine word or a feminine word? Why is it feminine? Because of this that. Linguistically, when the thing we're talking about is uniquely the function of something, this is al-irda', breastfeeding, is whose job? Is it females or males? it's females. When this is, when something is uniquely attributed to something else, the Quran does not use any distinguishing linguistic features because it's known that this is a woman thing. So typically the Quran would use murdi'. Murdi' is a masculine word, but linguistically everyone knows this only applies to women because it's only women that breastfeed, right? But linguistically, of course, murdi'a is absolutely correct, but it's just linguistically, the Quran could have said this. Well, what's the difference? Grammarians and linguists say the difference between murdi'a and murdi' is that murdi'a is a woman who is actively breastfeeding in the minute, right now. Murdi' is a woman who has the capacity, who's capable of breastfeeding, but she is not actively breastfeeding now. So murdi'a is immediately actively breastfeeding. Murdi' is someone who's capable, but not right now. And obviously the Quran has a point to make. What's the point? If the woman that is actively breastfeeding would throw away her kid, her baby, which is the strongest bond ever you can find on earth, the bond between a woman and her baby, she would be willing to throw away her baby because she is absolutely in shock by what is happening. How much more other people or other natures or other relationships that are of weaker natures? Isn't that fascinating about this language? Um, Stuff like these have led a lot of scholars to argue that to argue for the superiority of the Arabic language, that the Arabic language is the best of all languages, for the fact that I mentioned earlier, تحمل في جذور مفرداتها معانيها. When you locate, you can locate the meanings of words really in the origins of these words, the etymologies. So the vast majority of Muslim scholars argue for the uniqueness, the superiority of Arabic over any other language. Actually, a lot of Muslims would take this for granted anyway. Like we often say it's the لغة أهل الجنة. It's the language of the people of paradise. Isn't that a common thing? I'm being reminded of a book by a French author. It's called Les langues du paradis. لغات أهل الجنة. The languages of the people of paradise. Because this author, I can't remember his name really, he talks about the races and the people that have made this claim in the past. He says it's not just the Arabs, it's everyone. So the Greek claimed the same thing, everyone makes the same claim. But to the Muslim, in the Muslim tradition, it's so common. It's a scholarly position, probably one of the most established scholarly positions. But I want to today show you a unique position by a giant scholar. His name is Ibn Hazm. Ibn Hazm lived in the 5th century of Islam, died a couple of years before Al-Ghazali. When Al-Ghazali was literally a child. And he has a great book called Al-Ihkam fi Usul al-Ahkam. It's in Usul al-Fiqh, Islamic legal theory. Such a wonderful encyclopedia. He has an interesting section on this discussion. I will read with you some of the passages that he has here to see how he makes his case. So there is a section which is الباب الرابع في كيفية ظهور اللغات عن توقيف أم عن اصطلاح. So literally the question of whether languages are human-made or divinely inspired, if you like. So is it Allah who taught us how to speak, the words, etc., etc., or is it something we all agreed on? We agreed, every country, every nation would agree on something. And Ibn Hazm destroys those the Muslims who say otherwise, who say Arabic is unique or Arabic is superior to other languages. Ibn Hazm has been hurt a lot in Al Andalus, literally for everything, for his theological positions, his legal positions, his relationship to the Maliki school, literally for everything. Uh, Such a wonderful scholar, and maybe we'll look at him in another discussion or something. But let's see what he has to say. It says, وَقَدْ تَوَهَّمَ قَوْمٌ فِي لُغَاتِهِمْ أَنَّهَا أَفْضَلُ اللُّغَاتِ. Says some people, he's referring to the Arabs apparently, that it's the language is the most superior of all languages. He says, وَهَذَا قَدْ تَوَهَّمَ قَوْمٌ, literally he's saying they have convinced themselves. They have managed to convince themselves that the language is superior to any other language. He says, وَهَذَا لَا مَعْنَى لَهُ. This is nonsensical. It has no meaning. لأن وجوه الفضل معروفة وإنما هي بعمل أو اختصاص. Says, we know that people are privileged over others only by virtue of the actions, what they do, the attitudes, etc., etc., or something that they have been divinely given. أو اختصاص. ولا عمل للغة, as in the language does not work on its own, it needs us to speak it. ولا جاء نص في تفضيل لغة على لغة, and there is no text, there is no religious text that says this language is better than that language. It's actually وقد قال تعالى وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا بلسان قومه ليبين لهم. It's actually the Quran says every prophet, every messenger was sent to speaking in the language of his own people so that he makes things clear to them. So the point is making things clear. It's not about the superiority of the language. It's as if you are neglecting the aim and focusing on the tool. He says every prophet, every messenger had his own language, and the point is, the objective is to clarify for the people. وقال تعالى فإنما يسرناه بلسانك لعلهم يتذكرون. Says the same way Allah approaches the Prophet in the Quran, telling him, so we facilitated this book for you so that they might be reminded. So again, the objective is for people to be reminded. فأخبر تعالى أنه لم ينزل القرآن بلغة العرب إلا ليفهم ذلك قومه عليه السلام لا لغير ذلك. Says Allah tells us in these verses that the only purpose of revealing the Quran in Arabic is mainly because these people speak Arabic. It's not because Arabic is so unique or something. Then he says وقد غلط في ذلك جالينوس فقال إن لغة اليونانيين أفضل اللغات. Says the great Greek physician Galen made a mistake when he thought that the language of the Greek is the best of all languages. Then he says, then he is now still quoting Galen. Says لأن سائر اللغات إنما هي تشبه إما نباح الكلاب أو نقيق الضفادع. Says Galen made a mistake when he thought that the Greek language is better than any other language because other languages are either like the barking dogs or the croaking frogs. So obviously Ibn Hazm is critiquing this. قال وهذا جهل شديد. This is absolute nonsense. لأن كل سامع لغة ليست لغته ولا يفهمها فهي عنده في النصاب الذي ذكر جالينوس ولا فرق. This is to every person. This is the same thing. I can say the same thing about the Greek language itself. To me, it's like barking dogs or croaking frogs. So everyone can say the same thing about any language that they do not understand. To you, it looks strange. Then he says, وقد قال قوم العربية أفضل اللغات. Says some people said it's actually Arabic that is the best of all languages. لأنه بها نزل كلام الله تعالى, because Allah's revelation came in it or with it. قال وهذا لا معنى له. Says this is also nonsensical. لأن الله عز وجل قد أخبرنا أنه لم يرسل رسولا إلا بلسان قومه. Again repeats the same argument. every prophet would have is sent with the language of his people so that it just may clarify to them. So the purpose is clarification, not the language itself. وقال تعالى وإن من أمة إلا خلا فيها نذير. Then he quotes a couple of other verses. He says فبكل لغة قد نزل كلام الله تعالى ووحيه. He says every revelation, he says it's as if you are denying that earlier revelations were there. وقد أنزل التوراة والإنجيل والزبور وكلم موسى عليه السلام بالعبرانية. He says Allah spoke to Moses in Hebrew. As in revelation came in Hebrew as well. That's Ibn Hazm's point. وأنزل الصحف على إبراهيم عليه السلام بالسريانية. And he spoke to Prophet Ibrahim in Syriac. فتساوت اللغات في هذا تساويا واحدا. Says languages are equal in this regard. وأما لغة أهل الجنة وأهل النار. As for the claim that Muslims make that Arabic is the language of the people of paradise, فلا علم عندنا إلا ما جاء في النص والإجماع. Says we have no certain knowledge of this, of how the people of paradise will speak, and we have no consensus on anything in relation to this. Then he says ولا نص ولا إجماع في ذلك. He says there is no religious text that actually says that. No, there is an ijma', there is no consensus, scholarly consensus. إلا أنه لا بد لهم من لغة يتكلمون بها ضرورة. Says, but there is one single fact that we know, that they have to speak. ولا يخلو ذلك من أحد ثلاثة أوجه لا رابع لها. Then he says, we only have one of three possibilities, not four. إما أن تكون لهم لغة واحدة من اللغات القائمة بيننا الآن. It says either they speak in one of the languages existing and living languages that we have today. وإما أن تكون لهم لغة غير جميع هذه اللغات. Or that they speak a language that is completely different from the languages that we have today. وإما أن تكون لهم لغات شتى. Or that they have different languages. They speak different languages in paradise. So we have three possibilities. One, Allah picks one of the living languages when the Day of Judgment comes by. Second, that they will be speaking a completely different language to the living ones. Or that they would speak different languages anyway. Then he says, لكن هذه المحاورة التي وصفها الله تعالى توجب القطع بأنهم يتفاهمون بلغة إما بالعربية المختلفة في القرآن عنهم أو بغيرها مما الله تعالى أعلم به. وقد ادعى بعضهم أن اللغة العربية هي لغتهم. So he says now he's now critiquing the people that claimed otherwise, that claimed Arabic is the language of paradise. واحتج بقول الله عز وجل. The people that claim so always quoted this verse in Surah Yunus that says وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Now Ibn Hazm is telling us over a dialogue that he had with one of his fellows. He said, my fellow says, actually the people of paradise would be speaking in Arabic because Surah Yunus tells us that the last prayer the people of paradise would be saying, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Right? So he's citing a prayer that is attributed to the people of paradise, saying, the Quran is telling us that we'll be speaking Arabic. وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Then Ibn Hazm says فقلت له فقل إنها أيضا لغة أهل النار. Ibn Hazm says actually if you say so then this applies also to the people of hell. Didn't they say to the people of paradise أفيضوا علينا من الماء أو مما رزقكم الله? Says the people of hell as well in the Quran speak Arabic. Because they ask the people of hell, or they ask the people of paradise for water. They say, we need water. Or of whatever Allah has provided for you. And then he says, and they also said in Surah Al-Mulk, لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير. It says equally they say, according to Surah Al-Mulk, if only we understood or reasoned, or that we listened to the revelation that came to us, we wouldn't have been here. فقال لي نعم. Then he said, my fellow said, yes, I make the same case. I agree. فقلت له فاقض أن موسى وجميع الأنبياء عليهم السلام كانت لغتهم العربية. Then he says, if Ibn Hazm says to his friend, if you follow the same logic, you're literally saying that Musa spoke Arabic, Ibrahim spoke Arabic, and all those people spoke Arabic. It says لأن كلامهم محكي في القرآن عنهم بالعربية, because the Quran also spoke Arabic in relation to Musa and Ibrahim, etc. فإن قلت هذا كذبت ربك. But this, if you really reach this point where you claim that Ibrahim spoke Arabic and Moses spoke Arabic, it's as if you are denying the Quran itself. Why? Because the Quran already told us وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ. Every prophet spoke in the language of his own people. Do you get the point? فصح أن الله تعالى إنما يحكي لنا معاني كلام كل قائل في لغته باللغة التي بها نتفاهم ليبين لنا عز وجل فقط. Says the whole point is Allah is speaking to us in the language that we understand. Because we understand Arabic, that's it. Allah spoke in Arabic. Allah gave us this revelation in Arabic. Nothing more, nothing less. وحروف الهجاء واحدة لا تفاضل بينها ولا قبح ولا حسن في بعضها دون بعض. Languages are the same, sounds are the same, letters are the same. There is nothing inherently unique about any language that makes it better than any other language. وهي تلك بأعيانها في كل لغة. Every language has sounds, every language has letters, the same. فبطلت هذه الدعاوى الزائغة الهجينة. All these claims are just ridiculous and invalidated by what I said. وبالله تعالى التوفيق. وقد أدى هذا الوسواس العامية. Says this sort of popular thinking has led أدى هذا الوسواس العامي اليهود إلى أن استجازوا الكذب والحلف على الباطل بغير العبرانية. He said this sort of illogical thinking or popular thinking had led the Jews or some of the Jews to argue that we can lie to other nations that don't speak Hebrew and that we can falsely swear in other languages. Why? وادعوا أن الملائكة الذين يرفعون الأعمال لا يفهمون إلا العبرانية. It's because they thought angels, because they only speak Hebrew, they won't understand if we lie. And they won't understand if we make false swears, false oaths. فلا يكتبون عليهم غيره. So he says, then these angels won't be able to report, or won't be able to write down the lies that we make or the false oaths that we make. He says, this type of popular thinking has led some Jews to claim these ridiculous claims. He says, وَفِي هَذَا مِنَ السَّخَفِ مَا تَرَى. He says, this is ridiculous and absurd. وعالم الخفيات وما في الضمائر. But Allah, who has access to the secrets of our hearts, عالم بكل لسان. He knows all languages. ومعانيه عز وجل لا إله إلا هو حسبنا ونعم الوكيل. Allah is sufficient for us. Allah has access to everything. In another place, he talks about all languages as signs of Allah. He quotes this verse of Surah Al-Rum, ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم. He says, Allah is telling us in Surah Al-Rum that one of Allah's signs is the diversity of languages that we have. He says, who are you to really downgrade one of Allah's signs when you claim that this language is lower than that language, when Allah says all languages are signs of Allah. Perhaps makes a strong case, but in the very same time, one can't deny at least, maybe not the superiority of Arabic, but at least the uniqueness of Arabic. Tell me, if there are other languages that would have this system. Every word, every letter would pause and reflect. What do you guys think? Yes, Jibran.
Doesn't Hebrew do something similar in the sense that 3-letter root words and then additions at the start and at the end to make
That's true.
collections of words?
It's the same family anyway. It's the same family. But how Arabic has been preserved is just phenomenal. In the Jewish tradition, they had no lexicons until the Arabs have developed lexicons. So the idea of having a dictionary that you go back to and you trace the origins of languages, etc., this is an Arab phenomenon. not an Arab as in it was Arabs. It was a the Arab culture, the Arab civilization had diverse races anyway. But Al Khalil ibn Ahmad and all those big names of Arabic grammarians, they developed the idea of having a lexicon that preserves the language itself. It was only later, after Muslims developed the idea of lexicons, that the Jews developed that. I think it's a common. I don't think the Jews deny that. Like if you read Jewish scholarly tradition, it's a given fact. Yeah.
What language did Ibn, like as in
Ibn Hazm.
Andalusia before?
Ibn Hazm was a great linguist. Like he's
Did he
just
speak Arab like did he speak
oh
Latin or
no,
the language of the time? Or?
no, he spoke Arabic. As far as you know, he spoke Arabic only. And by his time, Muslims have been in Muslim Spain for a long time, like in perhaps 200 years or something, if not even more. So he spoke, no, just he was a poet, like an outstanding poet. Um, he's very powerful. He's powerful in everything. Like due to this, his own age couldn't take him, couldn't embrace him. When you speak of scholars like Ibn Hazm, Ibn Khaldun, these names, people always say it's one of two possibilities. Either he was ahead of his age, that they couldn't take him, or that he came too late. Too late if he came in Abu Hanifa's time, Malik's time, when the whole scholarly tradition started, when there was a space for you to say, here is my project, I'm developing it, and it's everyone is happy, excited. If you come 200 years later when the idols have been shaped, then you can't break anything. So either he came too late or that he was ahead of his time. Um, just phenomenal. He felt that pain himself. Like I really sympathize with him. He has some beautiful poems where he talks about his own agonies with his people. Just unbelievable. And he says this. He thought, in one of the verses, he says, um, أنا الشمس في جو العلوم منيرة ولكن عيبي أن مطلعي الغرب. Says, I am the pioneering sun for the people with all the knowledge that I have. Except when I rose, I happen to have risen from the west. If I lived in the east, people would have listened to me. I think he was mistaken. Like even if he was in the east, because it would have been the same problem. It's just the culture was not taking giants anymore. At some point. At some point. Hakim, I think you had it.
Um, I think what you're saying like make totally sense in a way, but I think like we can argue against that. Like we can say like Arabic is not inherently like higher than any other languages, but as in the Quran has been revealed in Arabic and it has been revealed as for everyone else. It's not just for the Arabic people, it's for the whole world, which is different from other revelation. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the Arabic language to send a message to the whole world, knowing that all of them speak different languages and so on, it might be for a specific reason. When
Mm.
when he's saying like all languages are signed from Allah, right? Yeah, yes, all languages are signed from Allah, but some signs are greater than some sign, and no one can deny that. And as well, like maybe Arabic is not a language that's greater than other like at all time, but at our time, no one can deny that Arabic is greater. And if you have to learn a language, Arabic come first, because like if you don't understand Arabic, how are you meant to understand your own religion? No one can like um, reach the top of Islam without understanding
Mm.
Arabic. Like so, Arabic imposes itself as
Mhm.
important than all the other languages in that way
For Muslims.
for Muslims,
Yeah, thank you.
but everyone is meant to be Muslim.
You are beautiful, Allah, Hakim. Thank you. I like the passion that you speak with, mashallah. Uh, I mean, I do see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. Beautiful. Yes. Yeah,
Yep.
Alex.
I've thought this before. Like it's really interesting to think about. Allah is revealing the Quran in Arabic, which is also the language that He created.
Mm.
So like He's the one who created the language,
Mm.
which He is now using to
Mm.
reveal, to give us revelation. But then I also was sort of thinking like, hang on, where do we draw the line between what is a creation
Mm.
of Allah and what is a creation of people? Because like if we say, for example, like a mobile phone, is it that the mobile phone and everything
Mm.
is directly a creation of Allah, or is it
Mm.
that Allah has created us and then
Mhm.
we've gone and created a bunch of other stuff? Because
Same.
we've also created a bunch of things that maybe you wouldn't want to attribute to Allah, like all
Mhm.
this kind of like confusion and destruction that you wouldn't
Mm.
maybe I don't know, maybe you would, but it sort of feels like you wouldn't attribute that to Allah. So is it that Allah has created the Arabic language, or is it that He's created us and that we've created,
Mm.
as in humans have created these languages?
Interesting. I don't know. I personally, I honestly don't know. I do see the uniqueness of Arabic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say superiority, but it's a unique language. I've seen this first-handedly, definitely. Um, have you heard of this concept? Tawaqquf. Tawaqquf literally means. Tawaqquf literally when you suspend your judgment. So I don't know. When you say I really I don't know, and it's something that we lack as Muslims today. We don't have I don't know. That concept is not there. I have to take a decision now. Asyuti reminds me of Asyuti is a giant thinker. Again, another giant thinker. It's quite close to Ibn Hazm's stature as a giant, but he came even later, like 400 years later. He talks about, the Quran often speaks of Ismail alayhi salam, or that encounter between Ibrahim and Ismail when Ibrahim was about to slaughter Ismail, etc. Ibn Asyuti talks about amongst Muslim popular culture today, they always think it's Ismail. And the reality is the vast majority of early Muslim scholars up to the 5th century of Islam were of the view that it was actually Ishaq, Isaac. That's the majority opinion. This majority opinion only changed from the 5th century onward. That the other opinion that it was Ismail who had this situation with Ibrahim was actually Ismail. This started from from the 5th century's time onward up until Asyuti's time. Asyuti lived in the 10th century of Islam. So he writes a book on this, and he says he's comparing early Muslims' position on who the Zabih was, comparing this to the later position that became dominant in the 5th century of Islam onward. And then he practiced this. By the end of the book, he says, I don't know. The Quran is not very clear on whether it was Ismail or Ishaq. I don't know. It was one of his kids anyway. Is it Ismail? Allahu Alam. Is it Ishaq? Allahu Alam. That teaches us something, a sense of humility, intellectual humility. And wallah, it is something we need to practice more often. I don't know. I'm trying to learn. But even when I try to learn, I might not reach a point of absolute certainty. You might have some sort of preponderance where you think this position is clearer to me, but don't dismiss different views, especially if they are based on something. I think Hafid will add a question or comment. Yeah, please.
Something relating to the word nas. Just how encompassing it is, as in nas applies to literally everyone, big or small, male or female.
No.
And then after kullu mudi'a, as in I felt like this ayah, the surah in general, really is speaking to everyone. And there was a part to me when I was reading it, kind of trying to holistic tafsir, there was something to do with kind of multitude of religions or religious pluralism in a way. Later on, it speaks of different religions or even different manasik.
No.
I wonder if that's something to do with it, because throughout the surah I don't see Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu even. think Amin was only mentioned once. The rest are Ya Ayyuhan Nas. I wonder if part of the also maybe holistic thing is it speaking to different religions, or to the point of multiple religions living in the same time and having this tadafa.
One can definitely make this case. Are you saying this is probably one of the aims of the surah, or that's the point of the surah, or
Yes.
the sense of collectivity that's it's to everyone?
Yes.
Definitely. You can read it this way, or part of the narrative of reform that was when we had that discussion last week. Reform came across as, I mean, at least to me, as the dominant theme of the surah. And what happens when we come to this point, that Sunnat al-Tadaffur was literally and was read in the light of Ibrahim being introduced as a reformer, if you like. What happens when Tadaffur happens? How should one protect the reform that had been introduced, and the nature of Tadaffur itself, the check and balances of history, if you like. So this diversity was read as in religious traditions go through phases of ossification, phases of degradation, phases of decadence. If there is no other religious tradition that comes and tries to reform, then the whole world will just fossilize, if you like. And therefore we are literally in an ongoing process of reform that happens with revelations across the board, and different religious traditions provide scopes for this reform as we advance in history. Wallahu alam. But I mean, the holistic tafsir by definition is open to different ways of viewing the surah. Have 5 more minutes. I think Ayham had a question. We'll come back to you, Ben.
To the discussion on the different languages, superiority of Arabic. I think it is a very interesting topic. The way I look at it is through the lens of actuality and potentiality. I think, in other words, all languages in potentiality are equal. I think, however, then the effort of the speakers of these languages is the deciding factor. And I think, therefore, remember Martin Heidegger claims that German and ancient Greek are superior languages. I think he has a point, as long as it is in terms of potentiality. In other words, there's no doubt that German, English, French are superior to Arabic. In other words, they are able, the speakers of these languages are able to produce texts, ideas, and so on, while the speakers of Arabic language can't. And therefore, Arabic right now can't be superior. And maybe it was. So I think that conversation is interesting. It gets more interesting through the lens, in my opinion, of actuality.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. I think much of this can be sorted by what, or can be at least reframed by what the usulis could call tahriru mahallu niza. It's literally pinpoint what we are debating. Are we talking about the superiority or the uniqueness or the people's, accumulated efforts in preserving the language, etc.? I gave the example of the Jewish tradition, like the relationship with the Arabic lexicon. But then the Jewish tradition after that developed a massive lexical tradition. And Arabs had fallen in the way that I have mentioned. That today we have not really, if you put Arabic or what comes out of the Arabic language in today's Arab world, is significantly poorer than what comes out of other languages in terms of productivity, intellectual, philosophical stuff, even religious stuff. In the past 30, 40 years, much of original scholarship on Islam came from the English-speaking world. An undeniable fact. I'm not denying the existence of some giants in the Arab world today. I personally know many of them, but it's not. If you compare the scope and the productivity, etc., I consider language one of the key languages that a Muslim scholar, no matter where he lives, has to learn. just because of what had happened in the last 30, 40 years. We have no excuse. We have no excuse. In the same way, like non newcomers to Islam or non-Arabic speakers, they need to learn Arabic because this is the language of this deen. One of the interesting things I always remember from my Sheikh Mohammed Abdul Halim, was discussing his translation of the Quran at some point, and he said, I asked him, what was in your mind when you were working on this translation? He said, all I had, I always hear people talking about Arabic and the uniqueness of Arabic, it says, etc., etc. Says, my aim was to really try and get Muslims to view English as one of the languages of Islam. And that's a remarkable thing to think of. And when you read his translation, I mean, you can have reservations, but on the whole, the flow of it is just beautiful. When you read the translation, it doesn't feel that you're reading the translation as such. Much of his translation is like that, mashallah. I think I've seen one. Yes, Stefan, one last one, please.
Could language also be non-verbal? Because once we go to the barzakh, we don't have our bodies anymore. So we can't like speak and hear normally. We can still communicate with other people, who have died and still hear people who are still alive. But we don't have access to our bodies anymore. So there could be some like new way of communication we access after we die.
I think I practiced tawaqquf on what is clearer than this. I'd rather practice tawaqquf. I don't know. Allahu alam. Allahu alam. Thank you so much, guys. Inshallah, we meet up next week with another passage of this surah. Thank you for the great comments and questions. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.